Alright everybody, pull up close, because what I am about to walk you through tonight is not a normal celebrity news cycle. This is a 5-alarm meltdown. Perez Hilton, the man who built an entire empire dragging every single celebrity on the planet for the last 20 years, was caught on a live stream running a knife across his own body while his 3 children were in the next room. I am not exaggerating. I am not sensationalizing. Perez Hilton, on camera, in real time, sliced himself in front of the internet, and now the courts are stepping in. And that is just the first name on tonight's docket. Biggie Smalls' son is dragging his own grandmother's estate into court because someone allegedly rewrote a $200 million will the day before she died. 50 Cent walked into a sneaker launch and made Rick Ross break his own silence over a lie about equity that Rick Ross does not even own. Tyrese got yanked into the same night. Yo Gotti's Memphis restaurant just raised its minimum age to 30 because of the parking lot shootouts. Claressa Shields is trying to rap. Chanel West Coast is claiming her music pays her bills, and the numbers are humiliating. The Game says Kendrick Lamar will not pick up the phone. Ebro just turned a female rap conversation into another Drake versus Kendrick argument. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, a rapper stood next to a woman who cheated on him in public and asked her, on stream, how many times she slept with somebody else, and she said the number to his face. Every single one of those stories is opening up tonight. So sit down, lock the door, turn off the group chat, because this docket is on fire, and let's get into it. Look, I have been covering celebrity news for a long time, and Perez Hilton has always sat somewhere on the borderline. That is the honest read. The rants, the meltdowns, the tantrums, the beefs with people 3 times bigger than him, the crying videos on his own YouTube, the strange lonely energy behind every camera he has ever pointed at himself. Perez Hilton has always been walking a very thin wire. But this last incident is not borderline. This is not a rant. This is not a bad day. This is not a moment we can chalk up to Perez Hilton being Perez Hilton. Perez Hilton was caught on a live broadcast dragging a blade across his own skin while 3 children sit in his household as their legal guardian. 3 children. 10 years of parenting. And this is the visual the internet just watched, in high definition, in real time, with an audience of thousands. So now, predictably, the family court system has kicked in. Supervised visits only. Perez Hilton is no longer allowed to be alone with his own kids without another adult in the room. And honestly, that is the bare minimum a functioning system can do when a parent broadcasts self-mutilation to strangers on the internet. And here's the part that has to be said out loud. Who signed off on Perez Hilton having 3 kids over the last 10 years? Who was in the room when that decision got made? Who was the caseworker? Who was the surrogate? Who was the agency? Because you have watched this man for over a decade. You have seen every emotional collapse. You have seen every live stream where he cries into the camera about his career. You have seen every fight, every meltdown, every self-inflicted mess, every ambush he has picked with people who are minding their own business. And somewhere along the line the decision was made that Perez Hilton, a man who has never been able to stabilize his own emotional life for more than 6 months at a time, was going to raise 3 human beings. Understand something. You do not bring a life into the world to use it as therapy. You do not bring a life into the world to give yourself a project. You do not bring a life into the world because you are lonely and the algorithm has moved on. And the way Perez Hilton has behaved for years should have been the flashing red light that told him, personally, quietly, before anybody ever had to say it out loud, to pump the brakes. People need to sit with themselves before they leap into anything. Even something as small as bringing home a dog is a 15-year, 20-year emotional contract, and most folks do not do the math. They chase the feeling in the moment. They chase the aesthetic. They chase the photo op. They chase what looks good on the timeline. And then a real, breathing life is sitting in front of them, depending on them, watching them, and they have no plan. Perez Hilton is the biggest cautionary tale in that whole conversation right now. 3 kids, 1 knife, 1 live stream. That is the crime scene the internet just witnessed. And the courts are finally, treating it like the emergency it always was. This is not a joke. This is not a meme moment. Perez Hilton needs help. And more importantly, those 3 children need protection. That has to be the priority. That has to be the only priority. Everything else is background noise. Now flip the page, because this next one is going to hit hard, and it is going to sit with you for the rest of the night. Biggie Smalls' son is asking the court to launch a full investigation into how his own grandmother's will was rewritten one day, exactly one day, before she died. And when I say rewritten, I mean gutted. Voletta Wallace, Biggie Smalls' mother, allegedly signed a new version of that will 24 hours before her passing. And in that new version, Biggie Smalls' longtime manager was installed as the estate's executive, and every single one of Biggie Smalls' grandchildren was cut out of the $200 million estate. $200 million. Wiped from the bloodline. Handed to a foundation. That is what Biggie Smalls' son is now taking to a courthouse. And listen, I had always thought Voletta Wallace was too sharp for something like this. She protected Biggie Smalls' legacy for almost 3 decades. She stared down the whole music industry when nobody else would. She kept the wolves off her son's name. She fought Diddy in court over pennies that were rightfully hers. This was not a woman who folded under pressure. This was not a woman who signed things she did not read. But somebody got in that room in her last days, and somebody put a pen in her hand, and somebody guided her through a signature that erased her own grandchildren from Biggie Smalls' fortune. That is the accusation. That is what a courtroom is now going to have to unpack. And if you know anything about Biggie Smalls, if you know one single thing about the man, you know exactly what his instinct would have been. Biggie Smalls did not build that catalog for a foundation. Biggie Smalls did not die at 24 years old in the passenger seat of a rental in Los Angeles, so a manager could run his money through a nonprofit for the next 50 years. Biggie Smalls built that catalog for his family, for his kids, for his kids' kids, for his mother, for the Brooklyn block he came from. That is who Biggie Smalls was working for. And if his grandchildren blow every last dollar of it on cars and jewelry and terrible investments, that is still their choice, because it is their inheritance. Their grandfather paid the ultimate price to earn it. $200 million is not a foundation's money. That is Biggie Smalls' bloodline's money. Period. And if the courts do not fix this, hip-hop as a culture has to start asking harder questions about who is sitting bedside when its legend's family signed the last piece of paper. Next case on the docket. Claressa Shields needs to close the studio door and never look at another microphone again. I say this with love. I say this with respect. Claressa Shields is arguably the greatest female boxer alive right now. Claressa Shields is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. Claressa Shields is a legitimate champion in 3 weight classes. Claressa Shields has done things in the ring most fighters could not do on their best day. But Claressa Shields keeps trying to squeeze herself into a rap career, and it is not working, and it is embarrassing, and it needs to stop before it damages the boxing brand she has spent her entire adult life building. If I were a real rapper, I would feel personally insulted every time Claressa Shields dropped a track. You spent 10 years perfecting a craft. You bled for it. You slept in a booth. You built a fan base one song at a time. And here comes an athlete who thinks she can walk in the door on Tuesday and be a peer by Friday. That is not how it works. That has never been how it works. That is never going to be how it works. Claressa Shields has fewer than 1,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. Let that sentence sit in your head. Fewer than 1,000. Not fewer than 100,000. Not fewer than 10,000. Fewer than 1,000. She will never crack 10,000. She will never see 50,000. Papoose has been at this rap thing longer than most of the internet has been alive, and Papoose himself cannot push past 100,000 monthly listeners. So what does Claressa Shields think is going to happen for her? Look, Claressa Shields is a boxer. A world-class boxer. Stay in your lane, dominate your lane, and let the rap game go. She is now out here shaking hands with brands, trying to get investors to pump money into her boxing career, which is a smart move, because that is the arena she owns. Zeus already put money into her card. That fight became the one serious bout on a whole celebrity boxing show. That is where Claressa Shields belongs. Not on Spotify, not on Apple Music, not on Tidal. In the ring, where she is untouchable, where she is history, where nobody, and I mean nobody, can lay a glove on her legacy. Now let's talk about Chanel West Coast, because Chanel West Coast opened her mouth on the Sarah Fraser show this week and said something that made every single person who has ever worked for a paycheck roll their eyes so hard they saw the back of their own skull. Chanel West Coast built her whole television career because Rob Dyrdek handed it to her on a silver plate. That is not opinion. That is the paper trail. Chanel West Coast started as a receptionist at Fantasy Factory. She was answering phones. She was making copies. Rob Dyrdek then launched ridiculousness, sat her on the couch, and paid her $2 million a year to giggle. That was the gig. $2 million a year to sit on a couch and laugh at YouTube clips. And now, because a legal proceeding tied to a ridiculousness-affiliated company has forced financial documents into the open, we know Rob Dyrdek was pulling $32 million a year off that show because Rob Dyrdek was shooting 2 to 3 episodes a day. Rob Dyrdek turned ridiculousness into an assembly line. Rob Dyrdek was printing money in real time. Rob Dyrdek understood the assignment better than any producer of his generation. MTV, too, has now shut ridiculousness down. The whole network appears to have folded around it. The show is looking for a new home. And Chanel West Coast, on this podcast, said if she gets asked to come back, it would have to be for way more than $5 million, because it is expensive to live in Los Angeles. That is her direct claim. Fine. She has a point about Los Angeles. But she went further. Chanel West Coast also claimed the male co-host on the show was paid more than her. And when the host asked her how she knew, Chanel West Coast said she assumed it, because he wore expensive chains. That is her evidence. Chains. Understand something. That man has a clothing brand. That man has multiple income streams. That man has been building his own business empire while cameras were rolling. Chains do not equal salary. But Chanel West Coast wanted the soundbite. So Chanel West Coast played the gender card, said women in the industry were still being pushed down, and moved on. Girl, what were you being pushed down from? You were being paid $2 million a year to giggle at your co-host's stunt clips. That is not oppression. That is the easiest bag on cable television. Now Chanel West Coast is claiming she is surviving off her music career. All right, let's audit that. Chanel West Coast has 32,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. Her most recent song pulled 104,000 streams total. That is not a career. That is not rent in Los Angeles. That might, and I mean might, cover the electric bill. Her last album, released in 2024 while she was still on national television with a massive TV push behind her, did not crack 200,000 streams across 10 tracks. 10 tracks. 200,000 streams total. Chanel West Coast is not a musician. Chanel West Coast is cosplaying as a musician. Chanel West Coast is a television cast member who giggled her way to a paycheck, and now she is trying to rewrite that story so she can charge a higher rate for the reboot. And listen, this happens over and over in this industry. Somebody gets handed the biggest opportunity of their life. They never invent a single valuable thing on their own. And then when the show ends, they turn around and bite the hand that fed them for a decade. Rob Dyrdek gave Chanel West Coast a decade of television visibility. A decade. She would not have a music career of any kind, however small, without Rob Dyrdek. And her thank you is a podcast interview where she trashes her salary and claims she was oppressed. That is the loyalty tax of Los Angeles. Peep this one. Ebro just got on air and said something that on the surface actually sounded honest and useful. Ebro said that a popular female rapper admitted many female rap fans are not actually hip-hop fans. They are fans of the woman. That is a real observation. That is a genuine industry insight. Female rap fandom, in a lot of cases, is celebrity fandom in a rap costume, and a lot of those fans do not know or care about the deep catalog of the genre. Fine. Say that. Own that. Have a real conversation about it. But somehow, and only Ebro can pull this off, Ebro then turned that entire conversation into another Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and J. Cole debate. Ebro cannot help himself. Every single conversation, no matter where it starts, has to end on the same 3 men. There is a reason Ebro is not sitting where he used to sit on the main airwaves. There is a reason his platform keeps shrinking. And that reason is Ebro cannot resist forcing every topic back into the same tired triangle that has been beaten to death since 2016. Then there is Asuma. Asuma sat down for an interview and had to answer the question live, on camera, in front of God and everybody. How many times has your girl slept with Aspen Cartier? That was the actual question. And instead of shutting the interview down, instead of asking for a break, instead of walking off, Asuma sat there next to the woman in question and let the interviewer ask it again. This is the same woman who was openly caught on trips with other rappers. This is the same woman who was seen in public with somebody else. This is a woman who has publicly humiliated Asuma more times than a man should ever tolerate. And Asuma is still standing next to her, still calling her his partner, still trying to sell the world that this is a functional relationship. Then the interviewer actually called Aspen Cartier live on stream. Aspen Cartier picked up the phone, and when the host asked, "Aspen, have you been sleeping with Asama's girl?" Aspen Cartier said yes. On the record, on stream, in front of Asama's face. And Asama still did not stand up. Asama still did not walk out. Asama sat there and let the entire internet do the math on him in real time. That is a level of public humiliation most men would not walk back from in 10 years. Grow a spine, my brother. There is no romance worth that. There is no woman worth losing every ounce of self-respect for. Log off. Rebuild. Come back a different man. Flip the page. Yo Gotti's Memphis restaurant just raised its minimum age requirement to 30 and older. Why? Because Yo Gotti's Memphis restaurant has become a war zone. There are fights breaking out in the parking lot. There are shootouts at the valet stand. Guests are eating steak while other guests get dragged out by security. This is a beautiful, upscale restaurant on paper, and it has been open for years, so the food has to be good. It has to be. Nobody stays open in Memphis for that long without a real product on the plate. But at some point, Yo Gotti has to look at the math. When your fan base is a certain demographic and your name is on the door, that demographic is going to show up, and some slice of that demographic is going to bring the streets in with them. That is not a knock on Yo Gotti. That is business reality. That is what happens when a rapper who made his name in trap house mythology puts his face on a valet stand. The move here is silent ownership. Take your name off the door. Let the food speak. Let the ambience speak. Let the reviews on Google speak. Do not stand on the marquee with your face on it, because your face is a magnet for the wrong crowd. Yo Gotti's fans include the Moneybag Yo crowd. Yo Gotti's fans include a very specific pocket of the streets. Yo Gotti's fans are going to walk into your steakhouse expecting to see Yo Gotti, and when they do not, they are going to make their own entertainment. And that entertainment turns into police reports. If Yo Gotti wants a public-facing restaurant with his name attached, open a wing spot. Open a chicken joint. Something quick service. Something where nobody sits down for 2 hours in a suit with their op across the room. Because right now, this restaurant, no matter how good the food is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Somebody is going to get seriously hurt in that parking lot. Somebody is going to sue. Yo Gotti's name is going to be in every headline. Shut it down. Rebrand it. Reopen it. Take the name off. Let the food carry it. That is how you protect the investment. Now here is one that hurts to say out loud. Mama Duck, the mother of Lil Durk, spoke this week and said her son's fate is in God's hands. And she is right. She is being a mother. She is being a woman of faith. And there is nothing more anybody can offer her right now. Lil Durk is fighting a federal case, and the mountain in front of him is real. Mama Duck knows it. Everybody around him knows it. And in a moment like that, all a mother can do is pray, keep her head up, and love her son through it. We do not have to editorialize a mother praying for her boy. We do not have to have hot takes on a woman on her knees for her child. Let her have that. Let her keep her faith. That is the only thing that gets you through a federal calendar. And then there is the game. The game got on camera this week and did the thing again. The game said he cannot get in touch with Black Sam despite taking Nipsey Hussle on tour back in the day. The game said he cannot get Kendrick Lamar on the phone despite putting Kendrick Lamar on his very first mixtape. Roll the clip in your head, because you have heard the game make this speech before, and you are going to hear him make it again. The game says he put Kendrick Lamar on his mixtape. The game says he took Kendrick Lamar on tour. The game says he has always shown Kendrick Lamar nothing but love. The game says Top Dog picks up the phone every single time. But Kendrick Lamar, the game says, will not. And the game finished by saying he is not going to keep calling. He is not a groupie. He said his piece. He put it in the air. Between him and Kendrick Lamar, from his end, there is nothing personal. He said what he had to say. Nothing is between them. Here is the honest read. Whack 100 was wrong. There is no studio session coming. There is no reunion single coming. There is no Compton photo op coming. Kendrick Lamar does not want to be in a room with the game. TDE does not want to work with the game. And whatever was said behind closed doors, whatever the moment was, it was said hard enough that Kendrick Lamar will not even take a phone call. And the game has to accept that, because the game did more for the West Coast than most of that generation gives him credit for. Without the game holding the flag when the West Coast was gasping for air after Snoop Dogg and Dre went quiet, the West Coast could have been counted out for another decade. The game passed the torch to Kendrick Lamar. The game kept the sound alive. The game was, and I mean this with full weight, essential to the culture during a very specific window. But being essential yesterday does not mean anybody owes you a phone call today. That is the brutal math of this business. And where the game keeps tripping is when he brings up Drake showing up in Compton. Because Kendrick Lamar did songs with 50 Cent before Drake ever set foot in Compton. Kendrick Lamar has been in videos with 50 Cent. Kendrick Lamar has been photographed with 50 Cent. So the outrage about Drake coming to Compton rings hollow. That door was already open, my brother. That door had been open for years. The game just does not want to admit it. Because admitting it means admitting the beef with 50 Cent was one-sided and the culture moved on without waiting for the game's permission. Speaking of 50 Cent, the man walked into Reebok's sneaker launch this week, released the G-Unit shoe, and the sneaker sold out. And Rick Ross, predictably, took it personally, because Rick Ross always takes 50 Cent personally, because Rick Ross has been losing this rivalry publicly for over 15 years and does not seem to know how to stop. Rick Ross went on his radio show and said the sneakers are ugly, that nobody bought them, that all the pairs listed online are resellers pretending to move inventory. Then Rick Ross went further. Rick Ross claimed he was watching Verzuz when 50 Cent popped out on the Verzuz stage, and Rick Ross said, in a voice full of himself, "They may not know I own equity in Verzuz." So because 50 Cent walked out on the Verzuz stage, Rick Ross was suddenly the landlord. Rick Ross owns equity in Verzuz. Let that sentence live in the air for a second. Because it is not true. It is not remotely true. It is not even close to true. Let me walk you through the actual paper trail, because on this channel we deal in receipts, not vibes. Complex Media, which owned Verzuz, was sold in 2024 to a company called NTWRK. NTWRK has a lot of investors. Goldman Sachs is the biggest. Jimmy Iovine and UMG co-led a $50 million funding round alongside Goldman Sachs and Main Street Advisors. Now, here is where Rick Ross is confusing himself, because Rick Ross has a business relationship with Main Street Advisors. Main Street Advisors represents artists. Representation is not ownership. Being managed by a firm is not the same as owning a stake in every property that firm touches. Main Street Advisors also touches the Golden State Warriors' business dealings. Rick Ross does not own the Golden State Warriors. Rick Ross does not own Verzuz. Lion Tree Partners, Tenaya Capital, Live Nation, and Foot Locker also own pieces of NTWRK. Rick Ross does not appear on that cap table anywhere. Rick Ross does not own equity in Verzuz. Rick Ross is lying. Again. Publicly. In real time. And this is who Rick Ross is. This is his whole career. Rick Ross lied about being the biggest drug dealer in America. Rick Ross took his stage name from an actual convicted drug dealer, a real human being named Freeway Rick Ross, without permission, and built a mythology on top of it. Rick Ross lied about being a corrections officer for years until the paperwork surfaced. Rick Ross has built an entire career, brick by brick, on the finesse. And look, it works. Rick Ross has moved units. Rick Ross has moved product. Rick Ross has built a lifestyle brand. Rick Ross has empires of endorsements and Wingstop franchises and a Fayetteville mansion the size of a small town. But the moment you scratch the surface, the truth is thin. Rick Ross is not the boat. Rick Ross is the bloat. Biggest liar of all time. That is the new title. The bloat. And I want to see it in the comments tonight. The bloat. Biggest liar of all time. Rick Ross earned that. 50 Cent then made Rick Ross speak. And that itself is a power move you have to appreciate as a piece of tactical warfare. 50 Cent asked, publicly on Instagram, "Why is the CEO so quiet now?" And Rick Ross felt the pressure and had to respond within 24 hours. That is what 50 Cent does to people. 50 Cent has been in this game long enough to know exactly which button on which person will trigger a public reaction. And 50 Cent will push that button in front of 40 million followers without blinking. And by the way, back to the sneaker thing, go to eBay right now. Right now? Search G-Unit Reeboks. There are pages of resellers. There are pages of listings at double the retail price. There are people flipping those shoes as we speak. Rick Ross said nobody bought the sneakers. 10 seconds on eBay proves that a lie. 10 seconds of research. Rick Ross did not even do the 10 seconds of research. That is how confident he is that his fans will not check. And on the same night that 50 Cent was scorching Rick Ross, 50 Cent found the time to poke Tyrese too. Tyrese, as we all know, just walked out of a nasty, ugly, drawn-out divorce. And honestly, most of the damage to the public perception was self-inflicted. Tyrese lost his mind on the internet more than once during that proceeding. Tyrese cried on camera. Tyrese ranted on Instagram Live. Tyrese made himself the star of a story that should have been settled quietly in a mediator's office. And 50 Cent, being 50 Cent, could not resist. 50 Cent posted a clip mocking Tyrese, mocking the emotional meltdown, mocking the on-camera crying, and Tyrese immediately went viral again. Tyrese cannot buy peace right now. Every single time Tyrese thinks he is fading from the news cycle, 50 Cent yanks him back in. It is cruel. It is funny. It is 50 Cent. And that is the ecosystem we live in. Nobody in this game is untouchable when 50 Cent decides you are that day's entertainment. All right, take a breath. Let's do the sweep, because I want everybody who just tuned in to understand the scale of the night we just walked through. Perez Hilton is now under supervised visitation because he cut himself on a live stream in front of his own 3 children. Biggie Smalls' son is dragging his grandmother's rewritten will into court because someone allegedly cut every single grandchild out of a $200 million legacy the day before she died. Clarissa Shields needs to close the studio door forever and stay in the ring. Chanel West Coast is claiming a music career off 32,000 monthly listeners while asking for more than $5 million to come back to a canceled show. Ebro cannot stop turning every conversation into Drake versus Kendrick Lamar versus J. Cole. Asuma sat still and let a live phone call confirm his girl was cheating on him with Aspen Cartier. Yo Gotti's Memphis restaurant is a parking lot war zone and needs a rename and a silent owner. Mama Duck is praying for Lil Durk through a federal case. The game cannot get Kendrick Lamar on the phone and needs to accept that no amount of history erases a person's current answer. 50 Cent nuked Rick Ross's versus equity lie in one sentence and made him respond in 24 hours. And Tyrese got dragged in as the bonus punchline. That is one night. That is one docket. And every single story is going to have a chapter 2 by the end of the week. Now here is the part 1 I want you to think about before you scroll away. Every single one of these stories, every single one, comes back to the same core theme. Accountability. Perez Hilton avoiding it. Biggie Smalls' estate team avoiding it. Chanel West Coast avoiding it. Ebro avoiding it. Asuma avoiding it. Rick Ross avoiding it. Tyrese avoiding it. The game refusing to accept it. This entire cycle of celebrity news is a masterclass in what happens when powerful people never sit still long enough to be honest about themselves. And every one of these situations, if it gets ugly enough for long enough, ends the exact same way. In court, in supervision, in cancellation, in a shrinking listener count, in a live stream nobody can take back, in a phone that never rings, in a divorce settlement, in a business partner cutting ties. That is where all of this ends when nobody looks in the mirror. So here is the question I need you to bring into the comments. Out of all of tonight's stories, which one is the biggest scandal in the room? Is it Perez Hilton losing supervised access to his 3 kids? Is it Biggie Smalls' family being cut out of $200 million a day before Voletta Wallace passed away? Is it Rick Ross lying about Verzu's equity to save face in front of 50 Cent? Is it Asuma sitting still through a live cheating confirmation from Aspen Cartier? Is it Chanel West Coast trying to rewrite a $2 million giggle job into some kind of oppressed underdog story? Is it Yo Gotti's steakhouse turning into a police blotter? Is it the game finally realizing Kendrick Lamar has closed the door for good? Is it Tyrese getting slapped around by 50 Cent one more time? Drop your pick in the comments, argue with each other, and let me know if I missed anybody, because there is more coming. Every single one of these headlines has another chapter waiting. Perez Hilton is going to be back in court within 30 days. Biggie Smalls' son is going to file the next round of paperwork. Voletta Wallace's estate is going to have to open its books. Clarissa Shields is going to drop another song that nobody streams. Chanel West Coast is going to keep talking on podcasts until she talks herself out of the reboot entirely. Ebro is going to keep pivoting every conversation back to the same 3 men. Asuma is going to sit for another interview and pretend the last one did not happen. Rick Ross is going to lie about something new by Friday. 50 Cent is going to be there when he does, screenshot in hand, receipts ready. Yo Gotti is going to have to make a decision about his restaurant before somebody catches a body in that parking lot. Mama Duck is going to keep praying, and God bless her for it. And the game is going to release another song that nobody at TD plays in the office. I will be back to walk you through every single one of them the moment they break. That is the promise. That is the beat. That is the reason you keep coming back to this channel. Understand something, and I want you to sit with this. This is not tabloid noise. This is not gossip for gossip's sake. This is a mirror. And every celebrity we covered tonight is holding one up to a piece of the culture that is quietly breaking. Perez Hilton is the meltdown of the internet fame generation, the first blogger to be famous for being famous, unable to hold his own life together while 3 children look on. Biggie Smalls' will is the theft of Black legacy wealth, the story of what happens when a bloodline is not vigilant about paperwork in the final days. Claressa Shields is the death of self-awareness in modern celebrity, the belief that dominance in one arena entitles you to dominance in another. Chanel West Coast is the entitlement of nepotism-adjacent television, the belief that a handout is a hand-up. Asuma is the collapse of public masculinity, the belief that staying silent through humiliation is the same thing as being cool. Rick Ross is the finesse economy on its very last leg, the last generation of rapper who could get away with pretending he was somebody he was not. And 50 Cent, love him or hate him, is the last man in the game still willing to say, on camera, on the record, in high definition, that the emperor has no clothes. That is why 50 Cent keeps trending. That is why 50 Cent keeps winning. That is why every rapper who tries to lie in public eventually hears from 50 Cent by the end of the news cycle. The game is the ghost of a moment that already passed. The game is what happens when a man who was essential to the culture in 2005 cannot accept that 2026 does not owe him a phone call. And it is sad to watch, because the game has real talent, real stories, real bars in his catalog. But he cannot stop grinding on the same wound in public, and every time he does it, he shrinks a little more. Yo Gotti is the story of what happens when your name is a brand and your brand attracts a crowd your business plan cannot survive. Mama Duck is the story of every mother in every project's hallway across America who has ever waited on a federal calendar. And Tyrese, poor Tyrese, is the story of what the internet does to a man who forgets how to log off during his worst season. If you took a step back and looked at every single one of these stories together, the pattern is louder than any of the individual headlines. Celebrity is not a shield anymore. Celebrity used to be a fortress. Fame used to protect people from consequences. Fame used to buy silence. Fame used to bury paperwork. That era is over. The internet moves too fast now. The receipts are too accessible now. eBay searches are too easy. Court filings are too public. Podcast interviews are too archived. Every single one of these celebrities got caught this week because the barrier between what they say in private and what the world sees in public is thinner than it has ever been in human history. And they still have not adjusted. They are still moving like it is 2010. They are still moving like the newspaper cycle is going to save them by Monday morning. It is not. The internet remembers. The internet screenshots. The internet timestamps. The internet does not forget. And that is why the next 12 months in celebrity news are going to be the most brutal on record. Because for every Perez Hilton livestream, there is another one coming. For every Biggie Smalls estate battle, there are 3 more legacy artists' families about to fight the same fight. For every Chanel West Coast trying to rewrite the story of a canceled show, there is another cast member about to try the same play. For every Rick Ross lying about equity, there is a 50 Cent waiting with the paper trail. That is the rhythm of this year. That is why you subscribe. That is why you turn on notifications. That is why you keep coming back. Because we cover it here, honestly, all of it, every single week. So one more time, before I let you go, here is the ask. Hit the like button so more people find this breakdown, because YouTube only pushes this out to a bigger room if the room we are in tonight lights it up. Tap subscribe if you are new here, because tomorrow's docket is already lining up and it is going to be just as loud as tonight's. Drop your take in the comments and tell me which of tonight's 10 stories deserves the crown of biggest scandal of the week. Share it with the group chat that argues about this stuff. And then click the next video, because I have already broken down what Cardi B did last